one of the things that I would like to start with are the basic kind of principles or philosophies of what harmonic or harmony is, right? When I teach herbalism, we have this harmonic philosophy. So if you are interested in learning more, my first book is coming out through Victory Publishing in November. So some of this will be written there. So possibly the best way to absorb it is just to relax, to become as comfortable as you possibly can in your body, right? Root down, drop your grounding cord, and allow these ideas to just flow through and see where they sit in your being, right? Anything that is true tends to resonate, like the truth needs no defense, right? So I'll share this philosophy, but I will not defend the philosophy, since we're sitting in a space of harmony and seeking harmony with ourselves and with each other, right? If I drop my cards, they'll fall because of principles of gravity. I don't have to defend them, right? So, all right, harmonic philosophy. What is it? I have a few note cards because I can get a little distracted with all of this. I'm glad I wrote things down. So in harmonic philosophy, the basic beginning principle is the idea that life flows, right? Life flows harmonically. So in other words, life flows and death ceases, right? Everything in life is in relational movement to everything else, right? We start to understand it if you had a chance to listen to my friend Nassim Haramein about quantum theory. We understand, as we dig deeper into the human structure, the material-based structures, that what we keep finding is vibration or movement. So to begin with these concepts, we're going to just break down the time-space continuum on a Post-it note. We're going to do it really quick, right? Because if we can understand it that simply, then we really understand it, right? So space is movement, right? According to quantum theory, space is movement or vibration. And time is an attempt to measure movement, right? That's how we're going to look at it here. Time is just an attempt or a language of measuring what movement or life or space chooses to be, right? So everything, in order to be, everything, every matter-based thing, every vibration, in order to be, it relates with everything else, right? So we perceive this time, this era of time, space, flow, as being somewhat discordant, right? We're seeing this in our societal structures, some of these things that are not relating well to the other, right? So in harmonic flow, we recognize that these things, that everything is related to everything else. You are my relatives. As a matter of fact, our fates have been intertwined since always, right? Right now we're understanding that on the planet more and more, how our fates are intertwined. Whether I have anything personally or like personality-wise in common with you, our destinies on this planet rely on one another, and we're getting a more visceral sense of that increasingly in these times, right? We also were fated here. At some point, we had soul contract to say, hey, let's meet up at DisclosureFest this one year. I'm going to look in your eyes. For me, I'm going to love on you real hard, right? And we're going to share something of ourselves. One of the best ways to understand harmonic design is to actually think of our deeply relational connection with trees, right? Our fates are so intertwined, having co-evolved for millennia with the plant. Well, I call it kingdom, not kingdom. We're not about dominion. We're in kinship, right, with the plant world. We have co-evolved for millennia in such a way that our every breath comes from a tree, and their every breath comes from us. One of the most harmonic natural relationships that we already have is simply with the natural world. We don't have to effort in who we are. Our just our being alone, we have a natural exchange and dialogue and merge with the other, right? In this case, with the tree. So keep that in mind as we talk about that, right? So now to be, we talked about needing to be, Mark, we're needing to be in relation to one another, right? To be. So we're going to talk for a minute also about isness. So isness, or to be, as we mentioned before, is movement. Or it's also, we can consider it vibrational harmonic flow, right? Or flow in harmony with all that is. Is that where we are right now as a collective? Are we flowing in harmony with all that is? Are our leaders, are our mouthpieces flowing in a harmonic, or are we in discord? So we're going to talk a little bit about discord and harmony. And now, obviously, I love these topics because of my background in music, but there is place for a certain amount of discord in this time-space flow of living, right, that we exist in. It's like the difference between a classical structure in music with harmony, perfect harmonies and well-rounded tones, and good jazz, right? Good jazz has a little bit of discordance. So if we can sort of pull the courage of our convictions together during this time to participate in the ongoing dialogue in our global, like in our planetary family, we may be able to forgive ourselves this temporary discord, right, in this era of time, and just get on to making really good jazz, right, really good music. So as we were talking about beingness, you might think, like, what are we, right? What are we as a species? So beingness is as much a matter of embodying or embodiment of a when as it is a what. For example, I don't think that I'm a something, that I'm a person or this or that or this kind of, colorful meat muppet that moves through space, right? But I'm really a when. I am interrelated, holographically interrelated and connected processes through time, right? That's as much a part of our beingness as anything. So think about some of the processes that have happened just in this tiny span of the space-time flow that we're sharing here. Part of that would be like the rise and fall of your chest in breath, your blinking, the grass moving ever so gently around you, right? Your thought process is moving. Your process is through time, in part. We're that and far much more, right? So, and also a what, for a minute, I want to think you're as much a when as you are a what. And a what is a form. So we'll talk a little bit in a minute about what forms are in existence, right? But through the kind of herbalism that I teach, right, in the school, Anima Botanica School of Harmonic Herbalism, we talk that through this, or we share that through this harmonic lens, that healing, the wholeness of your being, we also interchange the word healing and holing and wholeness and holiness, right? In order to be in your holiness, your wholeness, it's understood as a verb, as an action, right? Health is an action. It's a movement. It's an action or a vibration. We use this verb to connote awakening and embodiment of what flows harmonically with, in, and as it all. So check in with your body there. Where are you with your body as it relates to how do I feel with it all right now? We're in a little bit of what can seem like a cacophonous, wild space, right? But how are we sitting? Are we able to feel our own breath and heartbeat no matter what's happening around us? Right? This is where your meditative practices kind of where the rubber hits the road, right? It's easy to meditate on a yoga mat once a week, in your shiny shinies and your beads and all of your things. But here we are. Welcome, right, to the kind of Baroque painting of what it is to exist in human form in this part of space and time, right? So how are we flowing with the isness of all that is within and as all that is right now, right? I'm having a hard time rooting, and I'm like, this is all half for me. I'm an old soul, right? I was like, okay, we're here, right? So now to evolve as a species, once we get to that part of just like, yeah, I'm good. This is all that is, right? I'm all that is. I'm in it. I'm with it. I'm as it, right? Now we're perpetually invited to evolve, especially at this time, right, in human history, to evolve as a species. So how do we do that? So we're going to just mention that evolution is a dynamic process. It's both extrinsically and intrinsically rhythmic in nature. So let's say that again. Evolution is extrinsically and intrinsically rhythmic in nature. It comes in waves. So a lot of individuals who are seeking to evolve our space on the planet at this time are doing something that will occur naturally within its rhythm and time that involves a deep soul-level trust that the design of who you are and the seed of who you are is right. It's perfect. It's absolutely right for these times. We have a little easier time understanding our perfection and the evolution of the species when we stand back and perhaps like look at the night sky, at the cosmos, right? And we say, wow, a birth of a star knows exactly when to birth, right? Look at that supernova. Look at the moon. She's so perfect in her cyclical, experiences. So we have no problem trusting the nature of our design when we look to the macro or even to the micro, right? But as it relates to our extrinsic and intrinsic rhythms through time as nature-based beings, when it comes to the little self, we go, oh, maybe nature got me wrong. Oh God, I do that thing, or I don't do that thing, or I'm not quite that form, right? So if you recognize that everything that you are and are becoming is already encrypted in the seed of yourself, it's already there. A sunflower, it will not grow into a peach tree. It will grow into a sunflower, right? As will you. You will grow into exactly and grow through exactly the perfection of your design, right? So there are no imperfections, as a matter of fact, in nature. There are only details, right? Our human culture creates a concept of perfection or not perfection, speaking to Virgos in Chiron and quadruple Virgos, right? This idea of perfection, right, doesn't have a good feeling in the body. But to recognize that imperfections are simply details that are inherent in form, right? So harmony being relational and relative, we understand that these details, these specifics or species-determined peculiarities or specificities, right, that they're an element of a soulful syncopation and synchronicity and an overall euphony of harmonic flow, right? So in other words, right, there's nothing that's wrong with them. In other words, nature or life or space, we can actually use these words interchangeably. Nature and life with a capital L, or space, that they hold and infinitely create expansion for diverse, holistically integrated form. I'm going to slow that down and go back because I saw everyone go, you're getting really wordy. This is how I think, right? This is why I do my work at 4 in the morning, because it makes sense at 4 in the morning. Maybe it doesn't make sense at 4 in the afternoon. So these diverse, holistically integrated forms are expressions in time-space flow, right? So life and space, they hold and infinitely create expansion for diversity. You're not wrong. Your human design is right. Now sit with that for a minute as we think about the issues that our species faces. We're like, how is this right? How is this right? We are headed so fast towards mass extinction. We're experiencing it now. And for me as a bee whisperer, also, I have a really, these last few weeks have been really challenging, right? Really challenging because I am with the bees. I know what's happening. So there's this part that's like, oh, what do you mean, Aleli, that it's perfect? This isn't feeling right. I don't want to see the end of our species. I like to be, right? I like to be in this form that I know so well. This is home for me, our only home, right? This planet. So that seems like a rather brazen thing for me to say, that it's all perfect, that you can trust the design, that we can trust, like, politicians' designs. I am saying that. That's a very strange thing to say, isn't it? But sit with me for a minute, okay? So we've got this idea of what happens in nature, right? We know that it's impermanent, right? By its very nature, impermanence is woven into our sequential, successive territorializing. That's also part of our human design. It's a little less comfortable to sit with, right? But as a permaculturist and as a medicine woman, we observe nature's design. This is what we can observe. We have a sequential, successive territorializing that is built into nature, and we are part of that. So at one point, every seed is also encrypted with the information and the coding for its demise because of this impermanence. Part of what adds value to living and being is that we know that if we don't capture on any level, the soul level experience or the bodily experience of being, we miss it. We miss it. It fleets. It comes and it goes. Our body is born and we grow and we participate, and at some point it transforms. Well, I've had the wonderful privilege of working shamanically and holding a lot of death. A lot of death. As a matter of fact, you have to be really comfortable with death to do it, and there's no way to talk about life without talking about death. Like we can't actually talk about light without talking about darkness or shadow, right? It's impossible. So at some point, we have to go into this space, and death is encrypted within us. But having this privilege of holding so much death, even my own father's death, who was a very gentle man, and so his death, and I do probably mean birth, was a very gentle progression. And as we talked about all things being processes through time, we had such a difficult time even bodily understanding this gentleman's passage that we didn't know when to call his time of death. It was actually our cat, Shadow, that jumped up on his chest and went like, oh, something's here, because it's a medicine cat. We're like, something has changed here, right? But it was such a progressive state. So he's flowing from one state to the next state, right? Our planet may also be in this space, in part. Part of it may be its time, and we may have some of the harbingers and the priests of that passage stepping into political power. It is possible. It is worth considering for first-rate thinkers, right? If you're thinking at all, you think this is possible, right? That there is a perfect design here. It's also possible that it isn't our time, and we have these successive, right, sequential territorializing, and we're just working out our turf. We're like, we ain't doing that yet, right? Like, I'm here, bam. An anthill takes the full space of an anthill. A bird's nest takes the full space of a bird's nest. And we as humans, particularly those of us who are more soulfully sensitive, actually have a really hard time territorializing, saying like, I get to be, right? Partly because some of our spiritual teachings are about the problematic issues of ego, right? Your ego. Your ego's the bad guy, right? So ego is very much a part of your design. You're not going to get rid of it. It's like standard factory direct. You're born, you get a heart. If you're lucky, you have all your parts. Like if you're lucky, you have all your parts. Y'all are so friggin' gorgeous here, like sitting here fully functional and like robust. Like I feel your energy like you're the lucky ones. We're the lucky ones, right? But if you get that, you also get an ego. And you get tonsils and you get an appendix, and we didn't used to know what those were for either, right? So the ego even has place, and the place of the ego in the being is to give place. Just place for you. Just enough ego that you say, I get to be, and I have just enough territory to fulfill my soul's purpose, right? The nature of why I'm here, the gifts that I'm here to give. So it's maybe not the voice that we typically hear in these circles about ego, but I'm a little bit of a cosmic troublemaker. Not a trickster, but definitely here on the growing edge, on the weedy, wild edge of consciousness, right? Saying, well, the tonsils weren't wrong. They were part of our immune system. And I feel like the ego is also part of our spiritual immune system, right? To say that the human spirit has some place, has a right to be, right? To embody. As a matter of fact, it has the call to do that. What we see in shamanism when people really aren't taking up their bodies, we see parasitic entities and we see death and dying, different forms of soul death and dying, right? So it's very important, actually, to get in a good harmonic relationship with your ego. So much like the tonsils, they're only problematic when they become inflamed, and the ego is the same, right? If it's inflamed, or it doesn't just say, I have a place to be, but I have the place to be, and I don't know about anything but me, right? So that's where we get this issue, and we're seeing that again politically, where we have this kind of mindset that is on offer to us to consider, and I've considered it and I'm chucking it out, but that's to say that only certain elite individuals have place and everything else does not, and only certain species have place and others do not, right? We're at a very bloated moment in terms of our own species. We are continually territorializing, which is our nature to do, and the planet's like, let's think about maybe there's some other species here, right? Maybe there are some other places in nature that also get to be. So it's an invitation into designing our human settlements, but also first settling in our minds, right? This being our first settlement of what it is that matters to us in order to be. How long and how lavishly do you need to live in order to fulfill your soul's path? That's like not an easy question to answer, but just allow that in at some level of your being. That one will take time to digest, but to consider that. Are you in harmony so much so that you say, my time and space is here? Like for me, I have my granddaughter being born in a few weeks, and I'm like, okay, moving into baby elder land, right? So in that elder space, thinking, how long do I need to be an elder? Have I imparted? Have I passed on what needs to pass on, right? In terms of that. So, okay, and with that, we're going to get a little more into the philosophy, the harmonic philosophy again, which is that the forms of life are infinite in their variety, but they're impermanent in their expression, which means as we ask this question of how much space-time does this form need in order to express its purpose and design, knowing that death, or perceiving that, I can't say knowing like I am the authority, I'm just saying perceiving that death is this continuum into new form. Are we willing to move into a next evolutionary form as embodied consciousness? Or what if consciousness were no longer embodied? Are we comfortable with the idea? Are we really truly settled on the fact that we are the awareness that's aware that it's aware, right? That you are also made of consciousness, not just time, space stuffs, right? But that you as a consciousness carry on past this form. Like I don't know. It's all that I can observe in nature. If nature is a midpoint teacher and the cosmos are that macro and our microbiology are that microcosm of how things are made, I tend to feel that in this realm of existence that we have it's not really the task. It's just, again, it's an invitation to look at the idea that even when you die, you don't die, right? It's, as a matter of fact, life feeds off of death. It's one of those things that's really hard to come into a vegan setting. Actually, it's say life feeds off death, right? Because that's also a sticking point in veganism. Is like, I don't want to see things die. I don't want to kill things in order to be, right? I'm so uncomfortable with this part of the design. But the plants and the animals have been eating each other since forever, right? Forever. It's what we do. I give my body to a tree when I'm done with it. Hell yeah. Like, when I die, I would love to have my body filled with fruit seeds and fruit tree seeds, and y'all eating my heart fruit and my brain fruit and my womb fruit and my everything juicy, right? It's just like, take it. Existence, have me, And so, and the same thing with a tree is going to eat us, and we eat all this stuff from a tree. It's so key to living. The forest dies without mushrooms and without trees falling and without a million bugs dying underneath. We literally are just always eating the bones of the planet, and she's always eating us back, right? In this kind of tantric giveaway dance of infinity, right? We're always doing this. So these forms that are infinite in variety but impermanent in their form or expression, they're at their essence, movement flowing through forms in infinite variety, right? Every form having all that it needs, so every form being you, that you have all that you need to be wholly expressed for the harmonic duration of the time in space, right? Or your space and time. You already have that. So the idea of scarcity is it's a dis-ease of thought. It's not an easy thought to think like, oh, there's not going to be enough for me. I'm not enough. This doesn't work. This life, my design, I'm wrong, right? These kinds of weird mini panics that as souls we occasionally find ourselves in, right? Everything in nature, every supernova that is born has what it needs to be born, to exist, and to blink out, right? In this grand orchestration of life. So we're going to be shape-shifting into eternity, knowing this. Right? Should we clap along for a minute? They're slapping their asses. That's rad. I kind of want to, just because we're here and we can. Woo! Okay. Also, that was a lot of sort of dense philosophy, right? There's just a little bit more to share with you. But that's just as good as anything right there. So here we go. So where were we? I'm going to take a sip. Do you guys want to take a sip and shake for a minute? Get comfortable. Is it what? What's in here is just dandelion root and violet leaf infusion. Yeah. Yeah. I needed it because I have to compete. So it's a vocal. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, roots. Eating more and more roots these days. We have some linden and red clover and calendula up in here. It's pretty good. So, there we go. Let's take just a few more, maybe group breaths, so we can just relax, because that was a lot. We'll go into the next. Whew. Are you guys following what's being said? Some of it making sense to you? Yeah? Okay. Is it resonating with you? Are you recognizing useful details for living in it? Okay. Because if not, we'll go an entirely different... I mean, we're not going to go as far as that, but we can go an entirely different way. Because what we want you to have is what you need, again, is a nourisher, right? Every soul having what it's need to fully express the nature of its design throughout, right, your shape shift through eternity. It's there. It's there. And since I'm kind of a mama, grandma archetype, I'm happy to feed you, baby. So it's perfectly orchestrated, right, in this omniversal rhythm. Also, the duration of your life is already encrypted and encoded in the seed of who you are, right? But there's an omniversal rhythm to it, not just universal rhythm. The universe being connected even farther beyond when we really get macro with it, right? And that rhythm, we're absolutely subject to it, right? So if you think for a minute, like, I don't know about all of you, but the astrology of a couple weeks ago was kicking my, like, cosmic booty a little bit. I was a little, like, melted down. I think a lot of people were feeling that. And so this idea of, like, a caterpillar in a chrysalis, right? When it's time for a caterpillar to transform into its next form, it is actually, you know, it's instinctive, but it's actually also sort of helpless to its encryption, right? It's just time. It's time, and so it goes, and it transforms. It doesn't have to choose. It doesn't have to effort. And I think there's a lot of this idea that our personal transformations and our planetary transformations are going to be an effort, that they have to be efforted. Now, we participate. That's different than effort. We participate for sure, based off of what is in our consciousness. But to actually show up and transform, we're as helpless to our processes as the caterpillar. When it is time to melt down unrecognizably to ourselves in the chrysalis and become the caterpillar goo, try to stop it. Try to stop your transformation, right? So you can relax a lot more about, like, I better transform and I better go to all the transformative things, or I'm not going to transform. I'm going to miss the boat. The bus will leave without me. Right? Maybe not. Right? Maybe the caterpillar will climb that branch and spin that chrysalis and melt down and come back and go, what is this? Yeah. But they also love that caterpillar form, right? Can we step into a place of easeful flow with who we are enough that our transformations become natural to us again? That we can rest knowing the perfection of what it is that we are, right? Can we do it? I think we can. Like, I know we can, actually. So this space that we take up, this life or nature that we successfully territorialize, right? Successively and sequentially territorialize as beings that exist, it's a necessary, space is necessary for our learning and growth and for evolutionary processes on this planet. We absolutely must embody the full space of our beingness, our individuated designs, in order for the thing to work. So how much do you hurt when you are kicking against your natural self? When you are kicking against the nature of who you are? You hurt, you are uncomfortable, you are uneasy, you are in dis-ease when that happens. But the second you surrender to the totality of the seed of your creation, of who you are, you can flow in with and all that is. It becomes ease-filled. Our healing, our holing, our wholeness, and our holiness, getting there feels good. This is what I know as a 6th-generation medicine woman. The reason that we think that medicine and healing feels bad is because we're in a current bit of discordant cosmic jazz, right? With the idea that medicine is poison, that we'll take in a little bit of poison and it will help us out, right? So it doesn't feel good when we take a harsh medicine. But when we actually unblock who we are and surrender to who we are and surrender to our design, it becomes very simple to remember that healing feels like, right? We have that often, like I've got a little booth back there with some harmonic herbal preparations, right, that we make in crystal grids, and we Reiki infuse them in the mountains with medicine music and all the good things, right? And often people will put them on and go, oh yeah, that feels whole to me, right? Because they're expecting this preparation to feel like, oh, it kind of stings or it kind of burns. No, you feel like, oh, there I am again, right? In ease. So this easy harmonic flow, right, is what our wholeness and our healing is about. It makes seeking healing modalities for yourself far more simple, because we're listening for a gut level, That's your teacher, right? Your gut. Like, yes. Moving towards something, That's your healing path. It's a path of yes, right? And the other thing is this like shrinking away, no, right? That's where you're personal, and it doesn't matter what form it takes. It could take Western allopathic medicine and very stringent, almost militant thought for a certain being to come into wholeness as a part of a process through time. Can we accept that about the other? Can we sit in harmony with others that are so diversely different from us? That's much harder to do. But when we do that, what do we discover? Again, every form has an infinite variety that has not just the right to be, but the design to be. It cannot help but be what it is, right? We evolve through this. We participate in our own enlightenment as per our individuated consciousness. So if your individuated consciousness says, ooh, veganism, absolutely right for me, or absolutely wrong for me, and it's a versus an it's right. It's right. It can be trusted. But it's much harder to say, well, I hold this particular form and this is delicious, right? So everything else should be like this, right? No, everything else shouldn't be like that. Everything else gets to be exactly as it is. And I get to breathe trusting it. I get to flow in knowing absolutely that it is perfect and that my place is right too, right? That I have the right to take up the space that I take up. Now, our consciousness evolves, it expands, right? We talked about expansion happening, or rather flowing with respects to harmony, right? You will expand the best when you are flowing in harmony with all that is. You don't have to effort like the caterpillar, right? I don't really want to get into how harmonic overtones are fractals because we're pretty deep down the rabbit hole already, unless you want to go there, but that's another story, okay? But this idea of, okay, so now I'm in harmony with myself and now I'm in harmony with the other. Well, what is harmony? What is that? I like the word. It sounds good, right? But what is harmony? So harmony connotes symbiosis, isn't it? Right? It connotes being in a symbiotic, a mutually beneficial exchange with the other. Now, symbiosis, we'll take the opposite of symbiosis, something like a parasitic relationship, something that takes, possibly without our permission, and takes without giving anything back, right? So that is discordant. That is not harmonious. But in trusting even the design of some parasitic experience or entity, you can understand that parasites are perfectly designed to feed off of your stagnation. I'm going to say that again. Parasites are perfectly designed to feed off of your stagnation. So then it changes our relationship with a parasite. A parasite can become an ally in awakening us to, where am I stagnant? Where am I dead? Where am I dead or dying, right? As a being, especially like emotionally or energetically, getting taken by some kind of parasitic entity, right? We think, well, that's awful, and there's good and bad, and it's a fight against good and evil, light and dark, for eternity. Absolutely, probably not. Probably that parasite is doing you a favor by, if you're paying attention, awakening you to this opportunity to say, I was dying there. I was dying there, and I didn't notice. I'm not in flow in that part of my life, right? So trusting even the design of things that we've villainized for a long time, right? Knowing that they're right too. So symbiosis also implies understanding, innerstanding, overstanding, and omnistanding, right? The self, the other, and the all in every prismatic facet of mutually beneficial exchange. Most of us are just like, I don't even know everything about myself. Now you're talking about me getting to know about every other and the all. That's kind of heady. That's kind of lofty, right? But if you take your one entry point into consciousness and into matter as your body, you're also encrypted with every answer to that invitation. You're also inside of you have the all. You are every archetype. It's possible. You could be a saint. You could be a murderer. You could be a rebel. You could be a criminal. You could be a priest, a visionary. Any of these archetypal experiences, we all in our human body have the potential to embody any of these archetypes. So you already know the all. You know it through the more complex matrices and like the sponge of your consciousness, right? All those little facets and all those little nooks and crannies of you that you're, trying to integrate. If you recognize, okay, those come from this complexity of the all. I embody it. You do embody it. You can be healthy, you can be well, right? You're both young and old simultaneously. Do you ever feel that? You think, oh man, like today I'm 90. And then most of the time, I think we all have an inner 2-year-old, right? It's also why I count time really differently. For me, I've always counted it in quarter centuries, right? So right now, I won't give you total. I'm almost 3, right? I'm in the 3 range. So I'm between 2 and 3 years old. We'll leave it blurry, even then. Because I think there's always this inner child that's just like, lollipop. I want the lollipop, and I want it now, like the yoga booty we were talking about, like, yeah, right? We want the lollipop, or we want what we want when we want it. And there's this part of us that's always the old soul, right? It always is. And so in having that space that's both, it's both and more. We're also in this time in history where we are both, we're answering more questions with not either or, but both and more. You are both young and old and eternal and nothing at all. You don't exist, right? Matter isn't real. Time is an illusion, right? So you get to be both and more. It's kind of fun in order to think, well, then what are we doing? What is this? Are you even embodied? Kind of yeah, kind of no. It's kind of like watching Star Wars or something, Oh my God, Luke, Leia, da, da. We want a grand epic, right? Because we mentioned earlier on that the time-space continuum is a very simple thing. Space being movement or vibration, and time being an attempt to measure movement. Well, in space, what instigates this movement, right? So what instigates movement is a story. The soul lives through story. And we like good stories. We need good villains. Do we have any good current villains in our social structures? Does everyone have their favorite villain right now? I bet you do, right? You have a favorite villain. You have a favorite protagonist. Woo! You needed moisture. You got it. Life drops. So we get to, the soul plays through story. It continues to choose form through story. You're born into a story that you get to reconcile The thing with mom that didn't or did happen, the thing with dad that didn't or did happen, right? Your ancestors, all of this. We come through, and this is what propels the soul's movement through matter-based form, is the story of who you are, right? And to recognize at any moment that you are the authority or the authority, the author of your experience, right? You are the authority of where the story goes next, in part, in co-creative part with all that is. We get a very little bit of free will in existence, just like a silly little amount, right? This is also what comes, a privilege of sitting shamanically with a lot of death has been in seeing that when someone comes through a death process, they'll discover really quickly, okay, I know the answers to who, what, where, why, when, right? Who is me or this, right? What is this? Why is because this, right? Because this form wants to be, right? When is always now. But it's the how of being that we get this tiny little bit of free will with. How do you want to do this form? How do you want to rock this form that you're in right now? This body, this life, this existence, and this time in space. How do you want to do it? And so with that in mind, you choose, you author it, make it juicy. Why not? Make it really good, right? You can spend all the time that you want in shadow work, in light work. You can spend it in the multiplicity. I think that the stuff of the soul is more complex than just light work or shadow work, right? But spend it where you will. The how, your little bit of free will that you're given in this bursting, supernovas and cycles of the moon and tides ebbing and flowing and your chest coming and going involuntarily, the number of breaths that you have on this planet, the how of how you want to play through time-space is a little up to you, right? So becoming in harmony, all I can say is it feels really good. It feels really good. It's a much more ease-filled, pleasurable way of being, of moving through space. So that extends from you as the center point, right? Like in permaculture, we have this idea of these zones in permaculture design. There's zone 0, and that's where you put like a house in a permaculture design. And then there's zone 1, and you've got your little kitchen garden. Zone 2, animals, whatever. And on the edges, there's always a zone for the wild spaces. We leave space on the edges of who we are to be wild. But I always think of zone 0 as the being, right? So that seed right in the middle of everything that sprouts from it, you being in harmony is going to influence everything around you all the way to the really wild edges of who you are, right? The really wild edges that sometimes we have a harder time coming into harmony with because we think that it won't be accepted, right? It's unknown. It could devour us, right? But probably not. Probably not. Probably it's part of your wholeness. Looks like we're going to wrap it up really quick. We could talk about the infinite tantric giveaway dance of certain things, but we won't. So basically, we'll just rest here with this idea of the magnificent consequence of your being, right? Magnificence of what it is to be, just to be. That your place is in whatever amount of free will that you have, yours to author, right? And at this time, for those of us who really love living, our play becomes clear. It looks like planting more trees in the commons, fruit trees, right? It looks like having, a weekend or 2 per month where you grab your friends and some scuba gear and you deep dive in the ocean for trash. And then maybe you make art out of that trash or fashion out of that trash or something, right? It can look like a lot of things. If you're really loving life and you're paying attention to the all, then you find your place that feels like, yes, that's where I want to be. That's what I can do for the family of life and myself in it, right? That's what I can do for myself because my destiny is interwoven with everything on the planet. What I can do for me is to clean up the earth. I can do that for myself to continue to be, right, in this form that I love so much. I love life so much, right? So that's really the invitation, and also the prayer of gratitude. What a beautiful thing it is just to be. That's it. I think we're going to start gathering. So thank you. Thank you all for sharing this with me.